Hello and welcome back, and I've got a few chores to do before I can actually get out and get on with my day and what I want to do. And what I actually want to do is I want to try and complete that task of finding an area I can kind of make a bush camp, or an area that I'm going to use for bushcrafting and those assorted type of activities. Now, if you've followed this channel, you will probably by now know I've tried on a couple of occasions to find a location without success. They've always ended in failure, but I'm optimistic today because I've actually been following a friend of mine who horse rides in a large forestry area. Now, it holds a lot of promise for me. It is on flat ground and possibly one of the largest in my part of North Cornwall, and I'm keen to give this a go. Now, there is a couple caveats with me going off this morning. Even though I'm up early, I do have to be back because I have kids at home, and yeah, it's a case of doing the family thing as well. It can't all be one-sided. And on top of that, with the dog, because I'm not getting him out for a walk now, he will be coming with me, and that will be his morning walk. So the weather is rather poor. There's mist, drizzle, there's wind, and it's beginning to pick up. And in between all that, when it does actually rain, it really comes down with the force of the wind. So I'm getting a coffee, a bit of morale when I'm out wandering around the woods. I've got to get all my equipment. I could have done this last night, should have done it, but hey, I'm getting it together now, and I'm selecting a few chosen items which I believe will be enough just to give me a head start to get this bushcraft camp started. Now, my dog Bracken, he's no fool. I've put a collar on him. He's seen me getting myself ready. He knows this is going to be something different than just his walk up the lanes. He's really excited for it, and I'm having a little bit of a job to contain his excitement. But as soon as we get here, he's straight out the car, tail wagging. He's looking at me, and he's thinking, hurry up, why are you bothering to put a coat on? Let's just go. Now, this plantation sits between two towns in North Cornwall. I drive past it when I go surfing, but I've always looked at the cars and dog walkers and thought, no, I shan't bother. But the horse riding lady who posts the pictures, it looked thoroughly enchanting. It looked big enough, and then I started checking on Google Maps like you do, hard copy maps, and checking out photographs that I could find online. I'd done my research basically, or basic research, and I thought to myself, this could be good to go. In fact, I thought to myself, this really will be the place. So we're walking down the forestry tracks, we're pulling off here and there, following what is potentially deer tracks, but unavoidably I'm not the only person that's been doing that, and it's not long before we start to find our first evidence of people using the woods not in the manner they possibly should do, as in leaving their rubbish and litter behind. And unfortunately, a lot of it does look to be by people indulging in bushcraft activities themselves. Now, I've got a grid reference to the outermost perimeters of this actual plantation, and I'm hoping that will pay off for me. But I'm already beginning to have my suspicions, because I've already encountered possibly 4 or 5 various bushcraft setups, and you can see by looking at them that the varying degree of skill and the varying degree of effort put in. But in any case, I'm not the only one using this wood, or would be the only one using this wood. So this is one of the better shelters I encountered, but it's still nothing that you could do an overnighter. It was too small. You could sit around possibly and have a drink and a chat, but that's all it pretty much was. It was probably built more for the entertainment value of building it. But if you're around a shelter like this, I do have to make a strong warning, and I've been caught out before. All I can say is if you stray too far away from these shelters, or not even too far away unfortunately, you stand a very good chance of encountering somebody's toilet, or somebody's toilet they haven't bothered to cover. Now all these white dots are funguses, and this forest is covered in them. It shares the same kind of climate is Davidstow airfield, and that is like misty, damp, and being so close proximity to the ocean and all the cold air coming in off the sea, this forest traps moisture. So even though it's flat ground, this forest was actually really damp. Now the grid reference I picked that I wanted to go to, unfortunately, as you can see, logging work was starting to happen. They were taking logs out from not the area I was hoping to go to, but I very shortly found it wouldn't be long. There was already signs they were starting to break tracks into the actual woodland. So it was a shame, but it is a working forest, and these trees are probably at their 70 or 80 year lifespan where they start to get harvested. There was still plenty of rubbish and evidence of people being here. They're left behind rubbish. But I did spot something that I was very keen to have a look at. And this is possibly one of the best examples of a shelter I could find in this wood. And it was a pretty good example of what is called a survival shelter. A simple little A-frame, one pole going down to the floor, and very simply just built up on the sides. This is a really good example of a survival shelter. And if you took out the actual rough bed that they put there, that wouldn't be too bad, and then covered, obviously it's been there for a while and it's starting to deteriorate, but yeah, that wasn't too bad an example. Somebody's effort. Now me and Bracken wandered all over this forest and we burnt up a lot of time, and I did a fair part of the perimeter thinking I might find a little hidey hole, but the perimeters were all holding water and it was really damp. It wasn't actually the location that or the promised land that I thought it was going to be. I left with a little bit of a heavy heart, but Bracken, he still had a good walk. He came away thinking he'd scored the championship goal. But for me, I really did start to think, will I ever find a location to build my bushcraft shelter? So as I walked around, I started to kind of long for the quiet little valleys, single track lanes, isolated little woodlands, and on the footpaths when I find odd little copse or little sporadic little pieces of woodland that I usually normally frequent. And I started to think that might be the better option for me. But before I could do that, and that would have to be another day, me and the family were going to go out for some family time, and that meant Bude and a walk along the canal. It was a pleasant stroll, even if it was slightly windy and murky conditions, but it's good to get outdoors, it's good to get the kids outdoors, and they came with their bikes and they thoroughly enjoyed their afternoon being outdoors.
It's late. No. Would you say that? Just say sorry about the confusion. I thought I was getting picked up on the way.
took the trains away back in the 60s. This was the old train track. So it's early the next day and I've got out onto the footpaths and I've hit one of those little hidden gems of a forest and woodland that I was mentioning. Now, I always have a little look around to just get the feel, the atmospherics before I go in. And now I'm checking out the footpath. I can see who's coming and going. If they're coming in with dogs, whether it's women, men, children, even if it's workmen, I do check some of the other entrances which would be used for people working, just to see and get a feel for who's in and around this woodland. So after spending possibly another hour checking around this woodland, I did actually find a little area. It's flat enough, not as flat as I'd really like, but where I live, you're up against the wall and it really is a struggle to find flat areas. Now, what I'm actually doing now is just having a look around and I'm just assessing making sure there's nothing that's going to fall down on me while I'm actually in this woodland. There isn't gales, but there is a little bit of a breeze making the tops of those trees move. So I'm just being a little bit cautious. I've already got an idea that I've got a solid square here with the tree trunks in each corner. And I've got a little admin area out here which gets a little bit of sun just outside the actual woodblock itself. Now coming back into it, you can see I've got a fair bit of shelter. But I'm already beginning to think to myself, if I'm building this here and me knowing where the location is, I've got a few things to consider. Now you can see I'm clearing the area here. That's the first job for myself, just getting rid of sticks, a bit of debris and all things like that. But then I'm possibly doing the most important bit to this build, and that's getting my compass. Where I live down here in the southwest, the most prominent wind direction is from the southwesterly quarter. Now coming from that direction, coming in off the Atlantic, you're going to get strong winds, and with those strong winds you're going to get torrential rain. So I want my back wall of my shelter facing that direction. You really do not want the opening to your shelter taking any of that wind and rain, because you might as well not have a roof, it'll just come straight in on you. So you can see north there, so right behind me is south. So pretty much where that tree there is possibly southwesterly. So I'm pretty much guessing my entrance needs to be up in that kind of direction. Behind me, my admin area, well, I possibly wouldn't be sitting out there if it was torrential rain, but I do know from that direction is where I'm going to get hit the most from wind. Now, most people and most areas will have some sort of knowledge to their local area on wind directions or prominent wind directions. Now, if you can find that out and you're building a bushcraft shelter, that could save you a lot of misery when you've put all the effort to build it, and then at the end of the day all you're going to do is get blasted by wind. So after deciding which way and how I'm going to orientate my shelter, let's get straight onto it. And that means getting straight onto delimbing some of the standing dead. And the standing dead here you really don't have to cut. A lot of this you can just push straight over. So I've just cut myself 2 posts, and they're going to bear all the weight of the roof and the shelter in essence. They're not going to be set in the ground, they're just going to be bound to the 2 trees, and the trees will provide the upright position, but the actual posts that I've cut will take all the downward pressure of the actual weight of the roof and the structure. So no load pressure will be placed on any of these trees. Now the cordage I'm using isn't paracord, quite simply because everything you're going to use here, I want to be able to degrade and literally disappear away quite fast. The simple reason paracord will stay around for years and years and years. I've actually got a clothesline which I used, I think it was 3 to 4 mil paracord, and it's still there and I'm still using it now, and it's been in operation for 5 years. Now even the standing dead here, it's really wet and I'm really working hard with a saw. I really could have done with my big bow saw to actually go through this, because it's just at that size a handsaw really is working hard. But you can see the height there and you can roughly see what I'm planning on doing. I'm just sizing it up against the tree there with my other post. And I'm doing this pretty much by eye. Now I'm bounding these uprights in 3 positions, top, bottom and middle. They're not going anywhere. So this gives you the idea of what I'm talking about, and as you can see, no load pressure is going to be placed on that tree. It's just basically there as an upright stay for those posts. Looking across, you can see it's reasonably level, and you can probably begin to figure out what I'm going to do next. And that is, I'm going to get pretty much a ridge pole to go across, and now I've got to go and select that ridge pole and get it prepped ready to go across. Now I've picked the best piece I can find, which is the driest, and there doesn't look to be any insect damage, or it hasn't got any punk wood, or it's rotting. This pole here will take a fair bit of load, but for me, I'm not doing a heavy slanted roof. My roof is going to have a severe pitch. The reason I'm doing such a severe pitch on it is quite simply because it's easier to provide or make it watertight if the water is literally running straight down and there's no chance of it hanging around on the roof. So what I have there is the actual framework now I can build my shelter from. It's as simple as you can do. It does take a little bit of time to construct and get everything how you want it. But as you can see, I think it's a reasonably good frame to now start building what I want to do. And you can kind of see where it's going to at this particular point here. I'm against the clock and I'm pretty much out of time, but I've just got the first initial roof struts of the A-frame setup done, and from here you can see how this shelter is going to potentially look. So this is the last piece of wood I'm going to cut today. I've burnt my time and I'm quite happy with what I've done. I've found a location now. I've got the framework up. I've got it orientated, so I'm not going to be fighting the weather every time I come here. The most time consuming bit will possibly be actually doing these roof struts, because I'm looking for the straightest and then I've got to process each individual one down, and I'm guessing I've probably got the best part of 60 to do to cover this framework. From there I will cover the sides as I go, and I'll bring you along so you can see me do this. It's got to be windproof, it's got to be rainproof. I plan on doing some overnighters in here. So that was possibly why I've put that little bit more effort into this shelter, because I know I'm going to actually be staying in it overnight. I'm not just going to be sitting here having a drink and then toodling off home. So I'm trying to do the best I can to make this as comfortable as I can for myself. So the Bushcraft camp project is well underway. The shelter is actually happening. We've started. We found a location, we've orientated the shelter, we've got the frame up, and now we're starting on the roof trusses. This project is officially well underway now, and I feel pleased. We know what we got to do when we come back, and it is the first jobs are going to be to finish that roof and close the sides in. Now I hope you guys come along and well, stay with me and we see where we take this shelter. I've got high hopes for it and I want to spend some time in this wood in it. So this is Andy from Hidden Valley Footpaths. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to catch you guys out on the trail.